All right, here we go.
Awesome. Steve, let me know whenever you want me to get started here.
No problem. Hey there, everybody. I am Steve Taylor. Welcome to another installment of MSP Webinars. Today I'm joined from Auvik. Wow, I'm joined by Auvik. Wow, I just should start over. I'm killing it today. Yeah, I'm joined by Rob from Auvik. and that's how you guys know that this isn't scripted, and we are doing this live for you. So for those of you that are here watching this live, I do have a poll. It's just got two questions. Do you use Auvik today? And are you managing network devices for your clients? I'm kind of curious to see, what you guys are saying on that. The answers are anonymous. We'll talk about answers, but we won't know who said what. So if you could pop in an answer, that'd be great. So Rob, what do you think? Do you think most of the people here are using Auvik today or not?
My best guess would be no, and I'm assuming that's probably why they're on here, to learn a little bit more about network assessments, learn a little bit more about Auvik, and dive into some of the details about what we do.
Yep. And do you think that most of the people here are managing network devices today for their clients?
I'd say it's a solid maybe, in that I think a lot of them are being managed, but not to the full capability that they could be. And I think that there's a lot of business case that can be made for managing network devices to tie into managed service businesses. That's
fair. So I'm gonna leave this poll going for a little bit longer. What I'd like to do is I'll wait until we're maybe a little further along. You're going to do a presentation for us. It looks like your video froze. I don't know if you want to try like turning it off and back on. The famous words from the IT guy, right? Could you try turning it off and on?
All right. How are we looking now?
Oh, it's looking right now.
Okay,
So
I think we're okay now.
So yeah, if and for those of you that may have popped in late, the answers to the poll, they're anonymous. It's a real simple poll. I'd love to know who's using Auvik today and who's managing devices for client networks today. Now, Rob, you guys do like network equipment. I'm going to call it monitoring and management. But and we talked about that last time. It wasn't with you. It was with somebody else from your company. Today we're going to talk about network assessments.
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Now, I think everyone knows what product most people use for network assessments, and I would have never thought to use Auvik. I mean, it's safe to name drop because I'm not saying anything bad. It's a fantastic product. Rapid Fire Tools,
yes.
which is a Kaseya company, and so is like a third of the channel. So IT Glue was like secretly a Kaseya company. Is Auvik also a secretly Kaseya company?
I can't say for sure, but not that I know of.
Fair. All right, so everyone's using like Rapid Fire Tools. Why would I want to use Auvik? I mean, I already get 170 useless pages from Rapid Fire. Do I really need Auvik to do my network assessments too?
Well, I would definitely recommend it. We're going to give you a lot more visibility. And what we're going to do is give you a lot more visual. So you're going to have something more tangible, a little bit more empirical proof to directly provide to your client. But we're also not going to overload you with, as you said, 170 pages. We're going to present you a couple key details that are really going to help you win over new business and give not only you insight into the network, but give your clients as well. Simple, easy to use, and simple to understand when we give you the measurables.
Cool. Well, why don't you kind of take it away, dive into your presentation here, and then I'll share the results of this poll later. If anyone has any questions, please pop those into the Q&A section. If anyone has any just, general comments, chit chat, whatever, you can use the chat section for that. We'll have a nice Q&A section at the end here. Take it away, Rob.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steve. Well, first, I'd like to say I'm happy to be here today to give everyone a walkthrough on Auvik, and I'm going to show you how to have a successful network assessment using Auvik. So I've been with Auvik for about 1.5 years, and I'm one of our company's senior technical account managers. So in essence, I spend most of my daily time here at Auvik working alongside prospects and partners, really to help them utilize their software to the best of their ability. From a personal background, I've actually spent the last 6 years working as a repair technician. So I'm familiar with troubleshooting hardware, software. I know how frustrating things can get. And I'm happy to be working on the other side of things with MSPs to help empower them and simplify the remediation process. So before we dive right in, I want to clarify what it is I mean when we say a network assessment. So I know this can mean different things to different people. In our instance, we're using the term network assessment to understand a client's physical network infrastructure from top to bottom. So we're looking at everything from firewalls to wireless access points, right down to the endpoints on site. So really, our goal is to discover what hardware is on site, find out how it's connected to other devices, explore misconfigurations and maybe some issues the hardware might be experiencing. And then, of course, the end goal is to talk about how we can help you win new business using Auvik. So going over a bit of the agenda here. First, we're going to be learning about how to prepare your client for an assessment and what to expect as far as process and deliverables for your client. We're going to dive right into how we actually scope and price assessments, along with some of the best practices and some of those details. Third, we're going to look at the actual in-product stuff within Auvik, as well as some of the resources we have available to help build out network assessments. We'll also take you through a quick live demo of Auvik and go over some of the process for delivering a network assessment. And finally, we're going to discuss what happens when issues are discovered. We'll talk about how to prep your clients for what remediations they're going to take, what actions they're going to take, and best practices around what you should do if major issues are discovered. So I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about us over here at Auvik. So we are, as you said, a network management and monitoring solution designed specifically for MSPs. So we're focused on the managing and monitoring network infrastructure. And our key focuses would be on automation, efficiency, and ease of use. In essence, we want to make troubleshooting the network easier for MSPs and their teams. We are 100% channel focused. So we've been designed from the ground up, specifically for MSPs. We don't do any enterprise or corp IT, and therefore all of our R&D goes towards features that are going to benefit the MSP model, up to and including various integrations with MSP tools out there. And we are located in Waterloo, Ontario. So for those unfamiliar with our location, we're about 45 minutes west of Toronto. And as a little fun fact, we're commonly called the Silicon Valley of Canada. So while things may be quite a bit different up here, we are known as a large tech hub within our region. As a company, we've grown quickly over the past few years due to the need for a tool that actively and efficiently manages networks. We're now up to over 190 employees and continuing to grow. And we currently work with over 2,000 different MSP partners worldwide. Lastly, I'm sure you can see the little polar bear on screen there. You may recognize him as our mascot named Nanook. We go to a lot of events and trade shows. So if you haven't seen Nanook there, keep an eye out when you're traveling. But I do assure you, Nanook is quite hard to miss. Now that you know a little bit about us and our background, we're going to jump straight into the network assessment content. So you may be wondering what a network assessment is and what it's going to do for me in my business. So I always like to look at this from two different angles. The first one would be differentiating yourself from the pack. So you probably hear a lot of different stats about MSPs and service providers. And ultimately, when you're out there prospecting within your local market, you're going to be running into competition. So there's a couple different ways to differentiate. And you got to consider what are you doing better to really sell your prospect and win over their business. You could go ahead and differentiate on price, but ultimately that's a lose-lose scenario. It's really going to be a race to the bottom. What we find our most successful partners do is differentiate on value. So the challenge with that, however, is showing that type of value early on within the sales process. Basically, you want to go into a prospect prepared, and you want to have some tangible proof to show that you're different than the next guy who walks in the door tomorrow and says they're going to do a network assessment. So we look at network assessments as one of those upfront components you can provide to show tangible value early on in the sales process. The second angle, or the other reason to assess up front, is a little bit more selfish, but equally as important. It's to understand exactly what it is you're creating a quote on and what exactly it will be that you're onboarding. So you're going to know this from your experience. Not all clients are created equal. Have you ever had that feeling of going into a new client, prospecting, and drafting up a quote and not really knowing exactly what you're quoting on? Or have you ever had a surprise after you've signed a client on? Using a tool like Auvik, you're going to know exactly what you're getting into, and you're going to be quoting accurately. So this actually reminds me of one of our partners. They've been using Auvik to prospect and got an accurate view of a client's office environment, just like the client had told them. However, the client didn't happen to mention that they had a whole manufacturing floor downstairs. And that was just full of switches and other network infrastructure that the client didn't even know about. So our partner was happy to have Auvik when they were doing their network assessment and part of their onboarding, because they were able to quote accurately. And not only were they avoiding leaving money on the table, but they were able to make sure that they're not actually managing equipment that they didn't sign on for. So when it comes down to it, you want to make sure you're quoting accurately based on the whole infrastructure and not just a piece of it. You want to go into your quote with eyes wide open, so to speak. Without that kind of visibility, you are leaving money on the table and you're taking on more work than you've even realized you've agreed upon. The other nice piece is you can go ahead and charge for that assessment. I like to say that there's some huge value here, and it's a great way to start an engagement with a prospective new client and generate some upfront revenue. Charging for a network assessment ensures that your client has a bit of skin in the game, so to speak. So if you're giving away network assessments for free, why wouldn't a client want one? By charging a small fee, it's going to get them tied to you a bit tighter, gets them to invest a little bit more upfront. Now, time and price can vary from market to market, but it's definitely a great opportunity to generate a little bit of revenue upfront and help vet your prospects a little bit. So, for example, you're going to go in, you're going to run your assessments, you start to truly understand their network. You can make some recommendations and see if they're responsive to your suggestions. If they are, great. Start building that relationship and take the next steps. If they're not receptive to your suggestions, are they really a client that you want to work with? So this process is going to allow you to understand the type of client you're working with and learn if they're actually a good fit for your business. Another good approach here is to charge for the assessment up front, but credit it back if the client signs on to a managed services plan. That way, you're able to protect your bottom line while still being paid for the work you put in and providing value for your client. Now, I know we talked about this a little bit when we started talking about using Auvik as a differentiator. And another good example would be from one of our earliest partners, Corey Kirkendall from 5K Technical Services. He was a really early adopter of Auvik. And when he took a look at our software, he instantly saw how he could use Auvik to differentiate from other service providers. So his approach, I always find to be really unique and really cool. And It involves going onto his prospective client site. He starts up Auvik, begins his assessment, and while he's sitting there chatting with his prospect, he will have his laptop open, and he'll turn his laptop around and show the client a topology map of their network that's either midway through generating or fully created already. So he's really good at creating that aha moment for his prospects and really essentially wowing his customer. And from there, he has a much easier time selling because they're already blown away with that initial introduction to him. So with that, he's able to use visuals like the map, the metrics and key performance indicators that are being automatically generated, stuff like graphs that are pulled directly from their site. And he's able to demonstrate the high caliber of monitoring and management he's able to do in a really short period of time. Another good best practice when it comes to this is asking as soon as you are showing your client these deliverables, ask them if it's something their current provider is able to do. 9 times out of 10, the response you're going to get is no. So this is a really, as I said, a wow your customers type approach. And I find that works really well in the sales process. Now, you're also going to use Auvik to make your business case. So in order to sell, especially in these markets, you really need some concrete evidence. And assessments are a game changer when it comes to selling this service. They're essentially going to present the business case for you. So I'm going to share a couple words from a partner of ours, Martin Hines from BCS in the UK, because I find he really highlights the need for that evidence when it comes to assessments and winning over new business with clients.
Rob, I'm not hearing anything, bud.
Oh, sorry there, Steve. I heard there was a little bit of an audio error. Let me just make sure I have that sharing. Give me one moment here, okay?
Another thing that Auvik's great for is a sales tool. For instance, it will be able to tell you if certain network equipment is no longer fit for purpose. We have cases where clients may be running old, outdated switch gear. Nowadays, you can't just tell someone that equipment is old and outdated. You have to be able to build a business case for it. So using Auvik to be able to give statistics and graphs and information directly to the client, you can show them that actually the current infrastructure that they have might need changing, developing, moving along the way. And they really appreciate that help and guidance.
Awesome. I'm just going to pop my headphones back in here.
Interestingly enough, you sound so much better without the headphones. I think
you want me to take them off?
So if you click down next to the mute button, there's that little caret up chevron. You can select a different microphone.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and do that. I appreciate that feedback there, Steve.
Oh, okay. Well, if you took them out, I don't know if you need to.
Yeah. How's that now?
Yeah, you sound a lot better.
Oh, I figured headphones would have made the microphone a bit better, but hey, we'll continue like this.
I don't know. It sounded like a phone call before.
Oh, okay. Well, this is obviously a bit better than a phone call.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully Martin was able to bring in a little bit of recommendations as far as deliverables from the network assessment. Really, the key point I wanted to focus on there is that it's one thing to tell a client you need to replace a switch, but having the proof really is that game changer. The next guy who walks in the door could come in and make the same recommendations. They might be correct, but you got to look at this from the client's perspective. if they're able to see something tangible, that can make all the difference. So that's a little bit about why we're going to go ahead and do network assessments. Next up, we're going to talk about the how and the what. So when you get into your network assessment with your client, you're going to want to outline what that process looks like and really design this out for your client. You may have your own standards for your process, but you might have to change that process a little bit depending on your client. So you're going to want to know exactly what it is you're going to be delivering to them. Are you going to provide an in-depth report? Are you going to give them a live demo of their environment? Kind of like I was saying with Corey Kirkendall's story there. Or is it going to be a simple conversation? Perhaps this type of business came from a referral. So maybe a simple conversation is enough because you have that type of rapport. As we were talking about with a 170-page report, it's probably a little bit excessive for anybody, but you want to go in there and have something to back up what you're saying. And that really goes a long way in the sales process. Again, depending on the client, maybe a live demo is going to be the deliverable that works best here. We also want to outline what you're going to do if issues are discovered. You're going to want to be prepared to speak to your client about that and be prepared in this situation to give a little bit, but not to give it all away. The assessment's meant to be an example of the type of service you're able to provide. So if you go on site, you run a network assessment and you fix everything right up front, what's really left on the table? So you want to outline this as well. Are you going to be quoting to solve all discovered issues before fixing them? Or is there some type of agreed upon threshold where you can go ahead and resolve an issue if it meets a certain level of severity or cost to fix? So we'd always recommend fixing a few issues as the best practice, as it helps build that client rapport. It gets them into buying your services and shows them some results of your report. It's really a good way to get your techs executing on the findings. And you're also going to want to outline how much it costs if you choose to charge a fee for the service, which we would tell you should. Lay this out early on in the process so your client's expectations are managed and that there's no surprises at the end. You want to let them know exactly what it is you'll be doing and why. So a little bit further on, I'll dive into what to do when issues are discovered. But in short, you're going to want to discuss with your clients if there will be any impact to their network and make sure they're on board with your process as well. So before jumping into the actual steps, we do have plenty of resources available within our partner portal and onto our prospect pitch and sell kit. So we can get you set up with a step-by-step guide to leverage the information contained within Auvik. You can go ahead and use the PPS kit, prospect pitch and sell kit, as a great resource if you've never dived into network assessments before and you're just looking for a new way to generate revenue and land some new client business. Again, I do want to highlight that this is just one part of what I call a total client assessment that really focus on the network infrastructure. So we're focusing here on devices like firewalls, routers, switches, access points, again, key network infrastructure items. There are other pieces of software, as Steve had mentioned out there, that do a great job of diving into servers and applications. But our focus here is going to be on the actual physical infrastructure. So if we're looking at the actual steps, roughly for a network assessment, we would want to go in and deploy Auvik to start getting some visibility into the network. So we'll be doing the initial discovery. We'll start finding things we haven't found before. We're going to start to do what I like to call an inventory investigation. So we're going to understand what that inventory looks like and get rough counts on devices. We're going to look for old hardware, software, things that may have been installed many moons ago and at this point have been forgotten. We'll go ahead and review the actual topology. We'll see how things are physically laid out, see if we discover any surprises. Maybe we have manufacturing floors that people didn't even know had network infrastructure in it. We'll review performance results and alerts. So I usually recommend deploying Auvik when doing a network assessment on site for about a full week to get a comprehensive scan and get full details on things that happen over a small period of time, but less is okay too. Ideally, you want to get that full work week cycle to help understand full details on utilization, bandwidth, hiccups that might be encountered throughout the work week. But again, less time's okay, and it's still going to give you a ton of visibility into your client site. Finally, we're going to review for misconfigurations and do what we call a quick access level security analysis. We'll look at things like credentials to see if they should be updated or rotated. For example, if the switch has login credentials of admin with the password admin, we'd recommend changing those. And then we'd move on to the actual assessing stage. We make some quick fixes and recommendations to our clients, and finally move on to quoting. So now that we've shown we can be a network superhero, as we like to call them, we can confidently present an ongoing solution and plan to continue providing our client with that same level of service. So here's a quick snapshot as well of another piece of our prospect pitch and sell kit. Oh, it's a bit of a tongue twister. And this is the network assessment report piece. So we have this available entirely free for anyone on the call here, existing partners. In essence, we have the full report available that we'd encourage you guys to use, build on it, add to it. Now, you may have your own expertise and preferences, but you can definitely use this to get started. So here's where we're going to dive into the live view of Auvik. So I'm actually going to take you for a quick tour of how to go through all of the assessment points we highlighted, actually live on our office environment. So we've got a bit of a lab environment here to show you, but it will be up and running live. So I'm just going to share over that screen. All right, and we should be looking at what looks to be a topology map of our network, as well as metrics, details, a full dashboard. Everything look okay there, Steve?
Fantastic. I like the pretty colors.
So do clients. Visuals go a long way. All right. So if we were doing a network assessment, I'm going to break this down in the same order that I just kind of outlined everything. But I would start with going into the actual inventory first. So we'll click on inventory. We're going to take a look at all devices. And we can do a search, for example. So you can see we've got 549 different devices on this site. Maybe I want to filter that down and just do a search and see what switches are on site here. So we can see we've got 15 different switches. We've got a ton of different makes and models. So using this, you're going to get a better idea of the inventory available on a client site and what existing infrastructure they already have. We can pull up an inventory of any networks, for example. So I'd always recommend looking for something like a /16 network, which we do actually have right here. So best practices today suggest not having a broadcast domain of that size. So you can see we've got /24s, /30 here, but we're able to see across multiple subnets using Auvik. We can also look for public subnets. So an IP address similar to that. So not the best use case to have internal subnets overlapping with public sites. So again, another recommendation you can make to your client, let them know. You can also go ahead and look at something like the interface inventory. So we're going to drill down onto an actual interface or port level here. If it wants to work properly for me, apologies. There we go. So we'll go into all interfaces here. And you can actually take a look and see if there's negotiated speeds that are lower than expected. So, we've got 1 gigabit per second, 100 megabit per second. But again, if there are speeds that might be slower than what you'd expect to be seeing with modern equipment, could be an indication of a network bottleneck. If you pull up devices as well, you're typically able to see the make and model, the software version, serial number. So you can take a look and see the current running software. You can always make recommendations based on software or firmware models or firmware versions. Maybe if you see old hardware in place. So I know we've got Cisco 2800s on our site here. So they're a little bit older hardware. You can make recommendations to your clients that maybe there's some project work that needs to be done and they want to upgrade their switches because they're not able to handle bottlenecks or just the general traffic flowing through the network. The topology map that you're able to see here is a big one. So if we go ahead, we're looking at our lab environment. I'm going to filter down to just network elements only. So now we are looking at a topology map. I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. That's going to show us only our network infrastructure. So we've removed all the endpoints, printers, IoT devices. And if we want to go ahead and provide, again, that tangible piece of paper for our clients, we can go ahead and export the map. And you can export that as a PDF. Again, it's just a piece of your report to provide, but a very powerful one as well. You can also use the map itself to navigate and find just stuff that maybe your prospective client didn't even know existed. So kind of like the manufacturing floor example. Just going to remove all our filters. And we're going to zoom in a little bit here. So we've got a little cloud icon here. And you can see that it's telling us that there's a switch attached. So we know that these devices are connected, but we're unsure of exactly how they're connected to the main managed switch up here. So Auvik's going to be able to tell you if there's unmanaged switches. So this is great to find somebody who's decided to plug in a switch under their desk. Now, all this information is accessible on day one. But again, I would recommend parsing information over the course of a week, ideally. You can go ahead and pull up documentation. So you can see some of the more performance-related metrics. So if we pull up a report here, and I'm going to take a look at the network device utilization report. So this is going to give us some graphs. It's going to give us a breakdown of the actual WAN connection. We can see bandwidth flowing through devices. We can see whether devices are up and down. Really, this is going to give you a breakdown of all the performance metrics on different devices, as well as the WAN here. We do also have, just under our services inventory, we have an internet connection check. Now, this one is really important when it comes to the network assessment because it's going to allow you to show and help evaluate packet loss or latency over time. So the round trip time graph is showing you how much jitter and latency are impacting the user experience. So I always like to focus on this here as, especially these days, less things are hosted on site and more are hosted on cloud-based environments like AWS or using something like Salesforce in my case. If you're experiencing low performance here, you're gonna have most of your clients affected. I know in our office, if we've got poor internet performance, our sales team's gonna pop up like a bunch of meerkats and start asking each other, hey, is the internet slow? Hey. And eventually they look at each other and say, well, looks like I'm gonna work from home. And that ends up being a lot of time and efficiency lost, even just the travel time throughout the day. The next phase of the assessment would be taking a look at some of the misconfigurations within the network. So the best way to find this is right through the home dashboard. And we actually have a tab for detected misconfigurations. So if you go ahead and click on here, we're going to see what we have open on our network. So these are more of our informational alerts. And you can see it's showing us about trunk ports not being shared, for example. So you're going to see other details, stuff like interface mismatches, routes not being used, trunk ports not being shared, as we can see here. Now, these may appear to be minor issues today, but they're great examples of something you'd want to include in a report. So if we have a route not being used and you go to configure a subnet at a later date, you could be creating issues that may have triggered in the past based on performance. Or, apologies. We may create issues that we're not able to foresee. And if we have a route not being used and go to configure a subnet at a later date, we could create issues that we're not able to foresee currently. Now, beyond these informational alerts, we can look for more major alerts in our alert history tab. So if we click on all alerts, so right now we're looking at a period over the last 6 hours. So I'm just getting these to load up here. And we're able to see more critical alerts here. So you're going to get a view of alerts that are triggering, such as high CPU utilization. Maybe we have network devices flapping and going online and offline. We're also going to give you things like packet errors or discards that could indicate something like damaged cables or interfaces starting to fail. You might see more major issues, high broadcast traffic, for example, which is the precursor to a full-blown broadcast storm. And when you get one of those, your network's completely out of commission. So you don't want anything to escalate to that level. Essentially, if there's alerts being triggered on a core network device, I'd dive into it and find out why and include that in your network assessment report for your prospect. Now, the last thing I always like to highlight is just on the security side of things. So as I said, it's going to be more of a light security analysis. So if we go into managing our credentials here, we're going to see our SNMP credentials, which is one of the primary credentials we use within Auvik. Now we can see here if devices are using the default community string, like public and private. We've got a number of them even on our site using them. So you can see if these are the default community strings. And of course, I'd always make the recommendation to change them to be something unique. You can advise your prospect that the default community strings can expose information. You can do the same thing with login as well. So if you deploy Auvik, you see that we're able to log into devices with our default credentials, something like admin, as I mentioned before. You're going to want to advise your client to make changes to those credentials right away. Same thing with something that's using the same credentials repeatedly. So we've got our default Auvik credential and whatever associated password it is, but you can see we're logging into multiple devices with that. So in our environment, not the end of the world because it's a lab environment, it's a test environment. But when it's coming to an actual client, that's definitely not a best practice, and you want to make sure that they are as secure as possible. So this is kind of giving you that 30,000-foot view of Auvik and all the information you can acquire from it. But of course, you can expand this out and include specifics that may be of value to your specific partners. So I would always say it's in your best interest to get as much information as possible from your prospective client and explore and make recommendations based on any pain points that you discover from them and past issues that they may have run into as well. I'm just going to flip my screen share back once again. All right. So I think we are all set. All right, so we should be looking at a new screen right now. So the message we want to send home here is the way you can use intuitive visualizations to help prospects make sense of the findings in your assessment. And then you go ahead and show them how quickly you can identify and solve hidden issues before their business is impacted. So you can use the live demo to bring your findings to life. Honestly, in a lot of cases, the client that you're talking to, they're not necessarily a tech guy. They're not going to be up to speed with all the technical jargon and the nuances that they may be missing. So going in and having an easy to explain visual is going to help your client understand exactly what it is you're going to be doing for them, and inevitably help them see you not only as a service provider, but more of a technical business advisor type role as well. Now, the goal here really is to educate your prospect, use the network assessment results to lay the foundation for all of the recommendations within your proposal. And of course, be prepared to talk about price of your services during this phase. Now, one of the things I did touch upon earlier was what to do when we discover issues. Have you decided if you want to report them? Do you want to remediate them directly? I've gone ahead and put together a little table that gives you more of a recommended matrix that a lot of our partners use in practice to help guide them. So it may not always be this case with all clients, but doing a little bit of remediation is going to help build rapport with that client. And they're going to end up seeing how effective and professional you guys are in real time. So if you take a look at this matrix here, you can see I've grouped things together based on severity of issues and the impact. So for example, if there's an issue that's low cost to fix for you, but is going to have a huge operational gain for your client, impress them. Go ahead and remediate it. Show them just how effective you are. If there's an issue that's high cost for you or creates significant downtime for your client, you're more likely to include that in the report as more of a recommendation, a to-do list for a more convenient time. So you want to go ahead and use this as a rough guideline. Now, this may change depending on the size or value of the client. If there's an issue that's really high cost for you, you might want to reserve that for when you've won the business and they're actually your client. There's really no hard and fast rules for this beyond what you're comfortable with. Just make sure you're setting the right expectations from the outset. Cost. So this is always an important discussion piece. So it's the last thing I want to dive into here. And again, we mentioned before, lots of service providers can use network assessments as a relationship driver, revenue generator. You can use it as a prospecting tool. So ultimately, the question here becomes, do you charge for the assessment or don't you? We're firmly in the camp of yes, you should charge for it. You're providing resources, you're providing time, you're making actual recommendations to help improve their network. The question becomes, how do you price for it? How do you charge for it? So most of our partners tend to leverage one of two different types of models. So the cost plus model is fairly straightforward. You measure the number of hours spent times your hourly rate, and that's going to be your cost of engagement. Most of our partners would end up charging 1 or 2 days time and materials, but obviously if you're dealing with a much larger client, you'll have to adjust that cost as you see fit. And again, these are just typical ranges or guidelines that we commonly see. The other one's a little bit trickier, but also a good approach. So this is the value model. So what type of value does your prospect see in the assessment? How valuable are the recommendations you're providing? A lot of partners do shy away from this because it's hard to establish the tangible value. This can be different between an inbound or an outbound lead, for example. So you want to take both of those into consideration when pricing on the value model. And as I said, that's why most of our partners do aim for the cost plus model. It's just easier to price, it's easier to measure. And you may see the last point on this slide here. So we want to say that regardless of the model, it is common practice to credit this back to the client if they sign on for your services. I mean, the goal of the network assessment is to help engage with new clients. But if they don't decide to go ahead and move forward with you, at least you are getting some value on the bottom line for the work you've put in and the recommendations you've made. Again, jumping back to our prospect pitch and sell kit. If you're interested in learning how to do network assessments, we have the full kit available, and these are available just on the Auvik website. So if you visit auvik.com/grow, we're going to provide that to you free of charge. And if you are a current partner, you can go ahead and get that from either your partner success manager or directly through your partner portal. Steve, that basically sums it up on my end. Of course, we have some more time for questions or anything else you want to cover off today. So I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you. So I just want to clarify, what do you need from us for us to become a partner?
So to become a partner, the way we typically do it is we take you through a quick demo on all you really need to do is reach out and talk to any member of our team, and we'll set you up with the right people. We do go ahead and have a 2-week full featured trial, so you can try it out internally on your client sites, or if you are in the process of prospecting, we're happy to help you do so using Auvik.
Perfect. And so let's talk about some of these things that you're providing. Can you go back to that last slide?
Sure thing.
So we can go here, fill out a form, and you're going to provide us with this stuff. And we're also going to become a partner, and you're going to make it just super easy for us to be able to use Auvik to provide network assessments. Now, I do want to clarify, you said something earlier that, this is a network assessment and not more of an all-inclusive type of assessment. This isn't going to cover servers, workstations, etc., as thoroughly as other tools out there can, or even an RMM tool.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head right there. Primarily focused on the network infrastructure. So we're still going to be able to map out the servers and workstations, all of the endpoints that are out there. Even right down to smart light bulbs if you have them. But again, our focus and where we're able to get a lot more detail is on the network devices.
Now, what does Auvik cost? If Timmy, the MSP, wants to get started at the very bottom of the lowest amount of network devices possible, because like most RMM tools, I assume you've got like a $400 minimum with 36 age. I don't know. So what do you guys charge us?
So we're basically a month-to-month tiered and scaling plan. So the way we're set up is to kind of grow with you. So our very base level to get started would be $150 a month. And to give you a rough idea on how we price, we only bill you for very specific devices on the network. So we're looking at the number of routers, switches, firewalls, and Wi-Fi controllers. And I always like to highlight not access points. They're not a billable device. To jump into pricing a little bit further, I'd always recommend engaging with any of our account managers, chat it a little bit further, go through a demo and get a breakdown.
Sure.
Where you land for pricing all depends on your use case, but as low as $150 to get started per month.
The getting started is the part I'm worried about. For the guys that say, I've got 300 network devices. I'll let them go to you and twist your arms and make you give them a deal they can't refuse, right? But the part I'm trying to figure out is what's the minimum to come work with you? The fact that you are month to month, you're not going to lock us into an agreement. That is refreshing.
Yeah.
I like it. So you mentioned that it's very specific devices, routers, firewalls, Wi-Fi controllers, and switches. I believe that the scope on that may be even more narrow than that. Like if I've got a 15-year-old Linksys WRT54G, that's not a managed firewall or router. So you're not going to charge me for that thing, right? Because you're not really able to do anything with it.
Exactly. You got it. We're not going to charge you for anything we can't manage. So okay. Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that.
So the same applies. And you're a technical person, so I'm going to assume that you can give me a direct answer.
Let's hope so.
Ubiquity.
Yes.
So there's like Unify out there, right? That's what everyone's selling these days. Is when they're selling Ubiquity products, they're typically going with the Unify. They've got the nice firewalls now. They've got the managed switches. They've got the APs. So that you're able to get a full blown network from Ubiquity a lot cheaper than you can get it from Meraki or some of these other places, right?
Yep.
But with that, you can either do a cloud key, or you can install the controller on a computer that's there at the site, or you can have everything connect to maybe a controller you're managing yourself centrally in the cloud. Can you manage that stuff?
Yes, you can. So all the Ubiquiti stuff does tend to support SNMP.
Okay.
And the primary credential we use for managing within Auvik. I guess a very good baseline is if it has SNMP, we're going to be able to see it and pull information from it. And that does include Ubiquiti devices. I work with accounts all the time, and we deploy Auvik on sites that have Ubiquiti, mixed other vendors for some of the switches and routers in there. So yeah, no problem.
Well, so getting information and managing a device, I feel, are two different things, though. So using SNMP to pool information versus, because my understanding is Auvik, we can also use it for backing up configurations and doing some other management type stuff, correct?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay. So are you able to do the management stuff on like a Unify piece of equipment?
On some of the switches, really it depends on the model. And what that comes down to is having SSH access. So that's where we use one of our other credentials, the login creds. So the answer is a yes, but with some exceptions, I would say.
Fair. And with that, I think a lot of the other things that people are using now, Meraki, Sophos, even Datto networking equipment, these are just a few. Like a lot of these I feel like have a cloud controller or some type of centrally managed controller. I even saw AeroHive in your list. I know they've got that Hive manager or whatever they call it for the AeroHive devices. So my next question is, if all of my smart networking equipment, let's say when I go in and I get a new client, I just tell them to make it easy. All of your networking equipment is it's taken care of. It's included. I'm gonna replace their firewall with my managed one. I'm going to replace their crappy switches with my managed ones. I'm going to swap out their APs, and I'm just going to make sure that all of their stuff is set up correctly. I'm managing it. It's just going to be done right. So if I'm swapping all of that out, and I'm able to, in theory, manage it all from my existing central database, Unify, Meraki, whatever, right? What do I need you for?
So when it comes to situations like that, I mean, if you want to go ahead and include all the gear, that's a pretty expensive cost center on your side of things as the MSP. And in a lot of cases, I think it would be great if we could deploy Meraki to every single client out there. But at the same time, it's expensive. It's not cheap. So
it is, but for the people that are doing that, I'd like to think they're doing it right. And if I'm going to charge $200 a month per user, if they got 20 users, I can justify dropping a $1,000 or whatever on some networking equipment. And, maybe I do it to where it's my networking equipment too. They want to fire me in 4 years. That's fine. I'll take my gear and install it somewhere else. Like, I think it depends on how you set that up. I mean, for the little guy, sure, that's expensive. But for the little guy, can they justify $150 towards Auvik too? So, and it's that give and take, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
So earlier we did a little poll. I'm going to share these poll results now.
Yeah, I'd like to see those. And
it's actually kind of surprising, the results here. So, do you use Auvik today? 17% of the people said yes, 83% said no. So that I'm surprised we had some people saying yes. Let's go there, right? Do you manage network devices for clients? Of course, 75% of the people said yes, right? Of course, 3/4 of them are. 8% said sorta. 8% said no. And 8% chose the response, I tell them I do, but shh. You know what that, like there's people that'll tell their clients, yeah, I'll manage your network devices. But what that really means is if a network device goes down, then I'm going to drive out there and reactively address something, right? Otherwise, it's just going to sit on a shelf and collect dust somewhere. There's MSPs out there that'll do that.
Yeah. It's not uncommon.
I appreciate the one of you that was honest. All right, so I feel like I learned something. I learned a different approach to do network assessments, and I said, I just want to clarify. Earlier, I said 170 useless pages. I say that in jest because we run these reports from these other tools like Rapid Fire, and they give us so much information, but really like the only thing that we should be showing the end user, like the prospect, is like 3 or 4 pages worth of information. Like you the network guy, the smart person, you need to go through all of that and like try and condense it all down into 3 or 4 actionable pages of stuff. And doing that takes a lot of time, taking a big report and turning it into 3% of its current size or less, 1% of its current size, that's a big undertaking. So doing it the way that Rob is proposing we do it, that's, it's kind of refreshing, especially if you just sit there, you run the tool and then you spin your laptop around and say, here, check this out. This is what your network looks like. And here, you just start pointing at things on the screen. Here's what this means, and and you just make it real easy for the person on the other end of that table to realize that you know what you're doing. You've got the right tools to do the job, and maybe their network or whatever isn't set up as well as they thought it was, because that's the goal, right? You got to go in there. And unfortunately, you have to convince a company these days that their current provider sucks and they need to work with you, because everyone's got an IT guy these days, right? I mean, it's not 10 years ago where companies would just go to Best Buy, buy 20 computers and hope for the best. Everyone's got an IT guy these days. So you got to convince them their IT guy sucks and you don't. And I think this is a neat way to do it, Rob.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you learned something. I hope everyone else on the call there did too. Yeah, I mean, that's all I have for everybody today. If you guys want to learn a bit more, like I said, jump on in, take a look at the network assessment and prospect pitch and sell kit, or reach out to us directly.
Cool. And is anyone interested in sticking around and maybe convincing Rob to do like a little deeper dive into this dashboard, because we can do that if anyone here is interested. Otherwise, we can all just go eat Singapore noodles. It's about lunchtime, right? And go on about our day. So you guys let me know. Meanwhile, it's about that time. So whether we do that or not, it's not going to be on the webinar here. Rob, thanks so much for doing this. This is the second time Auvik has been on here. So if you guys are interested in learning more about Auvik, hop on auvik.com or hop on mspwebinars.com. You can also look at all of the previous webinars. They're all recorded, so you can check those all out. Until the next time, please enjoy your day. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for having us. Take care.